Hello, I am Jordan, and I am doing another read along with Steve Donahue this month. This month we are going to be reading the Ecclesiastical History of the English People by the Venerable Bede. This was a book that I was unaware of before I started watching Steve's channel. I saw it on his Daily Penguin a while back, and I have read a little bit about Bede since, and it's just kind of been on my list for quite a while. So I'm looking forward to getting into this, and so far, it has not disappointed at all. It's tremendous fun to read. It is. I'm new to reading. I'm relatively new to reading nonfiction at all, but I'm very new to reading ancient nonfiction, or even nonfiction, pre 20th century. And the way this is written is very ambitious. Bede seems to be taking an approach in which he wants to write about the geography and the history of Britain kind of at the same time, sometimes in the same sentence. It's a little bit jarring to modern sensibilities because I think if such a book were written at all now, it would certainly try to divide those things up a little more. At least in book one of this, that's not the case. You get the history and the geography kind of mashed in side by side, and it's actually done very interestingly. I don't know if it's just the novelty of it that I like, but there's something very, very charming about having uh, kind of natural history mixed in with human history in that way. And there's also just something charming about the voice of Bede as a writer. He's very, very unpretentious, which is, I suppose, to be expected from a devout scholar, which I understand he was. And he's also a gifted storyteller, I think. But his entire approach to writing history is interesting. And I'm going to kind of lays it out at the very beginning of the book, which is, sure, I'm trying to find I have the page marked. It's addressed to King Ceolwulf, who as I understand, commissioned the work, or at least the work was presented to him by Bede. And he writes at the very beginning, this is literally the first page of the book. He says, "History records good things of good men. If history records good things of good men, the thoughtful hearer is encouraged to imitate what is good. Or if it records evil of wicked men, the devout religious listener or reader is encouraged to avoid all that is sinful and perverse, and to follow what he knows to be good and pleasing to God." That's a very, very innocent, perhaps naive, but also charming and good-hearted approach to history. And certainly this book is probably more concerned with that kind of didactic approach than it is with accuracy, although Bede goes to great lengths, at least in the preface, to indicate what his sources are. And based on the introduction to this volume, apparently his sources are considered somewhat legitimate and accurate to this day, and he is considered a fairly reliable source by the standards of the time. So that's interesting. But I think I'm not reading this necessarily to learn anything about the history. I'm going to take everything I hear here with a very large portion of salt. I'm reading it mostly for the storytelling abilities and the voice, which are very, very engaging. I wanted to give you my personal favorite example so far, which is describing the death of the martyr, Saint Alban. This particular story begins with Saint Alban crossing the river in order to go to his execution spot. And before he crosses the river, he prays, and the river runs dry so that he can cross in order to walk to where he is to be put to death. And then it says, while this man, that is his executioner, changed from a persecutor to a companion in the true faith, and other executioners hesitated to pick up his sword from the ground, the most reverend confessor of God ascended a hill about 500 paces from the arena, accompanied by the crowd. This hill, a lovely spot as befitted the occasion, was clad in a gay mantle of many kinds of flowers. Here was neither cliff nor crag, but a gentle rising slope made smooth by nature, its beauty providing a worthy place to be hallowed by a martyr's blood. As he reached the summit, holy Alban asked God to give him water, and at once a perennial spring bubbled up at his feet, a sign to all present that it was at the martyr's prayer that the river also had dried up in its course. For it was not likely that the martyr who had dried up the waters of the river should lack water on a hilltop unless he willed it so. I love that that is interjected there. It's kind of a funny, whimsical little aside. But the river, having performed its due service, gave proof of its obedience and returned to its natural course. Here, then, the gallant martyr met his death and received the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. But the man whose impious hand struck off that pious head was not permitted to boast of his deed, for as the martyr's head fell, the executioner's eyes dropped out on the ground. That's quite evocative, but also whimsical and fun and unpretentious, I think, most importantly. This is not stuffed shirt history at all. It's very, very engaging and, like I said, good-hearted. And as far as the material that it covers a vast stretch of time. The early years of the history of the island are pretty compressed naturally, but it moves on through. It starts out with Julius Caesar basically, and it moves on through um, Augustine coming to be the Archbishop of the island, sent by Pope Gregory. And there's a very, very fascinating section in which we get what I believe are actual excerpts or actual full letters from Pope Gregory to various people, including Augustine, telling him how to um, govern or how to minister to the island, which are fascinating in a historical sense, which most of this book so far is not. Those letters, they seem to be very genuine. I'd have to research as to whether or not these are direct transcriptions or if Bede is messing with them. To me, the voice changes so much in that chapter that the impression I get is that they are genuine letters that Bede just transcribed exactly as they were into the book. In any case, that's more or less where book one ends. And I'm really enjoying this. It has not disappointed. I'm really looking forward to delving into it more in the month. I'm actually going to have to pace myself. It's quite a short book. If I was reading this at my own pace, I'd probably knock it out in about a week. It's going to be difficult to pace it out over the course of a month. But anyways, let me know what you guys are thinking of it. I know there's, I think, quite a few of us joining us, quite a few of you joining us this time, which is really, really exciting. I'm not sure what we're going to be reading for next week. My guess is that we're just going to do book two. We might be doing book 2 and 3. I will let Steve enlighten us on that when he makes his own video. But yeah, those are my thoughts so far. I think I covered everything I wanted to, but let me know what you guys are thinking of this, those of you who are joining us. And it's not too late, honestly, if you're just seeing this for the first time. It's a short book. You could easily catch up, and so far I'm really loving it. So anyways, thank you for watching. Have a good day.